Hey, have you ever thought about how security awareness programs are made and who's part of these organizations, but also how to improve these programs? Well, in this video, I want to talk about that and with the research backed by SANS. So we'll go over the research and their findings and the highlights of their findings in this video. Well, lay back, grab a cup of coffee, subscribe, leave a like, and at the end of the video, leave a comment. Let me know what you think of the video. But welcome, I'm Andre, and let's go over the highlights from SANS 2024 Embedding a Strong Security Culture report. That's their security awareness research with professionals from the area. Now, this is a long report, and I highly recommend you have a look at it. It's more than 20 pages long. I went over it, I read through it, and I understood the highlights, but also I looked at the very fundamental information that you need to understand from someone working in the industry. Okay, so first and foremost, they state that people have become the primary attack vector for cyber threat actors around the world. This is their statement. As a result, humans rather than technology represent the greatest risk to organizations. Security awareness programs and the professionals who manage them are key to mitigating this human risk. I like this approach and I like this line of thinking because they put the control back into the humans managing these programs, and humans who are the front line of every organization are responsible for keeping up with good security standing in organizations. So that's a great approach to it. Now, the way they do their report is going through 3 different sections. I will go through the different sections with you. So the first section that they want to go through is called benchmarking programs, essentially where they ask for the opinions of more than 1,000 practitioners all around the world for over 70 countries, which you can see on screen right now, for their insights on these 3 different sections. First one being benchmarking your program. So the first thing they did was to determine and define how a security awareness program maturity model works, or what framework is utilized by the industry. And for that framework, they utilize something that was created in 2011 and established by more than 200 awareness officers back in 2011. This is what you're seeing on screen right now. This is the framework that is utilized by essentially all these practitioners. And so they define what each of these maturity levels essentially work. The first level is non-existent. This is for programs that clearly do not exist in these organizations. So employees have no idea that they are a target, that their actions have a direct impact on the security of the organization. The second level is compliance focused. Programs designed to specifically meet compliance or audit requirements. The training is limited to annual or ad hoc basis, right? So this is a very targeted effort. The third level would be promoting awareness and behavioral change. This is where a program identifies the top human risks of the organization and the behaviors that manage those risks. These are programs that go beyond just annual training, unlike the previous maturity model. More mature programs at this stage tend to identify additional roles, departments, or regions that represent unique risks and require additional or specialized role-based training. The follow-up level would be long-term sustainment and culture change, where the program has processes, resources, and it's got a leadership support. As for the last maturity model, that would be the strategic metrics framework. This is a program that has robust metrics framework aligned with and supporting the organization's mission and business goals. The program here is no longer just measuring and reporting on changes in behavior or culture, but ultimately how these changes are reducing risk and enabling leadership to achieve their strategic priorities. So these programs tend to be able to demonstrate return on investment. Now, the report contains appendixes that essentially include more information on all of them. So I highly recommend you have a look at the report itself. The description has the link to the full report for you to have a look at that. Now, getting to the results of the first section and benchmarks essentially asks the participants where they identify the level, their maturity level of their organization, and almost half of them fall into the awareness, behavior change sort of maturity model, medium level, which is quite interesting. They went beyond just auditing and compliance needs, which is good to see, right? I say in some of the organizations I worked with in the past, they were just getting into that second level. They were adopting security awareness programs in order to stay compliant, in order to be able to abide to specific standards. But it's good to see that for these participants all around the world, it's sitting at about halfway through that maturity model. Second thing that I find really interesting here are the top human risks that have been asked. They asked, what are the top 3 concerns or human risks that the participants are focusing on for 2024? And the top human risks that they were focusing were unsurprisingly social engineering. That takes up most of the spot there. Secondly, passwords and strong authentication. Awesome to see there. But there's a massive chasm between the social engineering and passwords, so just be mindful of that. And then there's detection and reporting incidents. And at 4th place, we would see something like artificial intelligence programs and making sure that people are aware of them. Now, the report also describes what each one of these categories would be. I'm going to leave them to you, but social engineering will essentially think about how attackers always utilize different methods to exploit the trust of people and make them perform an action that they want to, right? Be that utilizing some sort of phishing via email or phishing via voice with phishing, or phishing via SMS, industry call smishing, right? So understanding all of these different methods are utilized to, of course, engineer someone to perform some activities for them, and so on and so forth. So there are further explanations in the report, which I highly recommend you have a look at. The next thing that I want to look at from the first section from Benchmark is program challenges. So they asked what people feel are the 2 biggest challenges limiting their ability to succeed in their programs. And between a range of different challenges, the top 3 were lack of time. So people finding lack of time because they have too much on their plates, lack of staff, too little people to work in their tasks, and lack of budget, right? So lack of money, which leads to lack of people and essentially leads to lack of time because puts everyone else under strain to do more work. There's that motto, do more with less, right? Now, these are some of the highlights from the benchmarking. I did also see there where they were asking the participants, where do they report to? There are departments that best describe where they report to. Most of them are doing cybersecurity or are part of the cybersecurity team. So that's quite interesting. That's good to see. Some are part of legal and audit and GRC, which I think would be amazing, right? So you have dedicated GRC teams to take care of that. And one of the most interesting questions from the benchmark section is really program blockers. So they asked the participants what are the blockers for their programs in their organizations. And it's interesting to see the divisions and responsibilities that they put into the program, right? So think about how mid-level managers, for example, were appointed as the biggest blocker for their security awareness program. Now that's interesting because special training initiative designed specifically for mid-level managers that focuses on why they should care about security should be able to help with this challenge, and that's what the report also points out. And then looking at the other challenges and blockers for security awareness programs, they identified finance team. Again, that's been pointed out with the lack of budget there. Other blockers, but also operations and even communications and branding. Kind of like an interesting take on all of that. For the second section, maturing your program. Now that's the point where SANS had a good understanding of the maturity of their program, of the participants' program, and the data that they used to benchmark was used to identify the key drivers of the program maturity and what participants can do based on that information. The survey there found a strong correlation between the size of a security awareness team and program maturity. So the larger the team, the greater the program's maturity level. Now, what the results have pointed out to the maturity of a program was first and foremost to understand how big is each team dealing with the level of maturity of these programs. So that was a question based on, well, tell us the maturity of your organization from the first section. So remember the maturity model, 5 levels that we went through. Then they asked how many people were full-time employees doing or performing these activities for those organizations. And the graph you see on screen, it's unsurprising. We see that the less people working full-time in these organizations, the less mature these organizations are. So people in organizations, rather, with more than 2 people dedicated to security awareness programs, they have sustainable or sustainment culture change level of maturity in this security awareness program. And of course, if they have more than 4 people on average, they will have the most mature security awareness program type there. So that's interesting to see, right? So the direct impact of people employed to perform these actions, and the level of maturity there. What they also point out at this section is the action items to increase team size. So these are 5 recommendations that SANS perform, and they leave as a recommendation for essentially these organizations to do that. So let me read them out to you, right? So the first and foremost is talk to leadership, right? And the cybersecurity teams in terms of risk. So conveying the message, risk is what they're addressing, not necessarily a compliance effort, but more than risk. Second is demonstrate the investment gap between technical and human-focused security. The recommendation there part is to explain while the organization has become very effective at securing technology, it has underinvested in human side, leaving its workforce and culture vulnerable. Right, a simple but effective way to demonstrate this is to count how many people are on your cybersecurity team, for example. That's what SANS is saying in the report. And then count how many of them are dedicated to the technology side versus the human side. Right? So that's interesting to discuss and argument back to management why they should invest not only in technology but on the people side as well. The third point there that they make is break down your needs. Document all the differences, all the different steps and initiatives you need to undertake to make the program effective. SANS recommends that the one approach is to align initiatives with leadership's strategic security priorities. So this helps improve detection and reporting capabilities, enabling technologies such as cloud and AI adoption, leading DevSecOps initiative for developers, and even reducing violations. Whatever these activities are focuses for the leadership, align the program to them. Once that is aligned, people can identify and document the number of required full-time employees needed for each of these efforts, including the human side, which we just covered before. The fourth point that SANS mentioned that can be taken to increase the team size is to leverage AI. Of course, we know that generative AI comes in to help people do more with less, right? If people don't have budget to hire additional resources, SANS says they could leverage generative AI. In many ways, generative AI can act as an intern or subject matter expert to help all of the needs of these organizations. That's what SANS says and claims, from creating emails and content to data or risk analysis. In my opinion, this is me, this is not in the report. This has to be taken with a lot of consideration, a lot of pondering, because there are important discussions to be held in terms of adopting such technologies that go way above just your team, regardless whether you're cybersecurity or whether you're security awareness program or so on and so forth. And the last point that SANS recommends there to increase your team size is to develop partnerships, right? So they acknowledge that people cannot do that all by themselves, so they need to partner with other departments in their organization, for example. That makes the effectiveness of these programs, well, better. Developing this, trying to take regular meetings with other team members and departments that are building a stronger culture, that's what they recommend. Now, the last bit of the report, section 3, it dives into the compensation and career growth of the participants. And that's incredibly important because it leads, of course, back to SANS' potential to help people grow in their career. But at a personal level, it really helps us understand how the industry is faring in that space. And that's really good because the first thing that they asked participants was their average salary by region. So that's really good because essentially they come up with some numbers per region, and we can see that, of course, people in the US are earning a lot more than people in Latin America. That's possibly reported in the US dollars, for example, right? Annual salary there for people in the same area varies greatly based on where they live, on the currency, of course, as you can see, and there's a lot of description on how the numbers are put up in that way. I'm going to leave you to read the report and the findings for more information in terms of the number, but that is the information right there on screen that you can see. They also broke down the average salary by professional background. The industry or program management is not necessarily just made up of only technical people. We know that there's non-technical people doing that. And of course, looking at average salary by professional background helps us understand how people are aligning in terms of their salary and their expertise. And you can also see that from the report on screen right now. And they also broke down the average salary by program maturity. That is quite interesting as well, because when people think about what's driving their program within their organizations, it also comes back to them in terms of how much the company is willing to, well, invest in them, I would say, right? So we can see that, for example, for organizations that have immature programs, they pay a lot less than people that have mature programs, for example. When one can also stipulate and assume that smaller organizations have non-existent programs, thus they pay less than what larger organizations that are more mature would also pay. So it's important to keep that in mind. Now, they also let the document, and the last graphic of the report is about how people are feeling in general in the industry, right? What is the professional job satisfaction from professionals in this area? And in general, more than half of people say that they love their field and they enjoy working for their company and they're not moving away from it. So that's good to see that the sentiment industry is very positive. The last thing that the report covers before the appendices is really how to grow compensation and career. And SANS makes some action items and recommendations for two groups of people, non-technical people and technical. For the non-technical individuals, they recommend expanding the role and developing the security skills. Now, they have trainings for all of these recommendations, and that's what they allude to. And I highly recommend you have a look at the document if you want to see what trainings they have for you, regardless of what category you fall under. But yeah, have a look at those recommendations, those trainings for that. Now, for the technical individuals, what they do recommend is know your bias. Understand that people that are technical have strong security background most of the time, right? But make sure people craft the messaging. Don't get too technical in conversations that don't require so. And lastly, they say for technical people to develop communication and engagement skills. That's very important. I saw that in my line of work as well. I'm not in security awareness program management, but even for as a technical person, I know how important it is to develop communication and engagement skills for me as well. So a very, very valid recommendation. So this has been SANS 2024 Security Awareness Program report around the world. I've learned a lot about seeing how participants are finding these programs around the world, the maturity, general maturity of these programs. We also saw that framework for maturity model created in 2011, which is incredibly useful for everyone in every conversation around cybersecurity. So take that along to yourself. But if you want to learn more about what SANS is saying, I highly recommend you have a look at the full report. And if you want my tips on growing your career as well, because I can definitely get you to it, leave a comment. Let me know. I'll reach out. All right. Other than that, have a good one.